Are you trying to figure out how to get things done? Are you trying to look for knowledge that can actually help you do something, be better at what you do? Hi, I'm Joyce Mbaya, founder of Zydii, where we provide affordable online courses for Africa. This is the place for you, the Zydii podcast, where we have inspiring conversations with amazing people. And the ultimate goal is to help you know more so you can do more.
Leading in a time of change. You probably have heard this statement more than once, that in life and business, change is the only constant. Well, while this may be true, many people struggle to navigate through change. For leaders, the struggle to lead in a time of change and uncertainty is compounded because beyond managing self, leaders also carry both the fears and the aspirations of the organization and the team. In order to anticipate, manage, and lead effectively in a time of change, leaders need to understand that leading change is a process. And so, in this module, you will learn the 4 phases of leading through change. Now, when leaders understand the phases of change, they have a better picture of knowing what they need to do and when. They also know what actions to take with their teams today in order to prepare for tomorrow. And they can also anticipate and mitigate the many predictable problems. To get us to the 4 phases of change, let's begin with a story about change. The story about change that I'm going to share with you is actually a true story. It's a story shared between 2 East African countries, namely Tanzania and Kenya. And this story is actually one of those recorded as the 7 wonders of the world. And beginning the months of June into July, this is when the story actually gets to begin. And the story is about the wild beast migration. So in the months of June to July, the wild beast migration begins in Tanzania in Serengeti. Now, the reason as to why this migration begins is because in this season, grass in Serengeti begins to dry. And it's already one of those things that the wild beasts know because it's in their DNA, it's in the way they live their lives, that when the grass in the Serengeti begins to dry up, they know it is time to move. And so the movement begins in the form of a herd moving from one direction to another. Now, the way the wild beasts do this migration is that they do not have a leader whom they get to follow. But normally we know the rules of the jungle is that survival is for the fittest. So those that are fittest in the herd are the ones that take the lead. And the reason for this is because they set the pace for the rest of the wild beasts to follow. Now, if you have read the story about the wild beast migration, you and I know that it's not only the wild beasts that migrate. We have got hundreds upon hundreds of other browsers as well that get to follow the wild beasts in their migration journey. So we have the zebras, we have the antelopes in there, and it's quite a spectacle. In fact, it's said that you can be able to monitor it all the way from space, outer space that is. And so the strongest of the wild beasts begin setting the pace for the migration. And the journey is a long, winding one. But of course, they follow paths that those who go through this journey have been able to follow before. And as I get to the edge of the Serengeti, right there's a barrier that, stands between the dry grass environment on this side and the greener grass on the other side. And this barrier is one of those that, for those of us who have done the geography, you really know this barrier very well. And this is the Mara River. Now, the wild beasts come across the Mara River and they know for them to get to the other side where grass is greener, they have no option but to cross it. But of course, the older wild beasts know that this is not the first time they're crossing this river, and they do know for sure that in this river lurks danger. And those that succeed to navigate through this dangerous phase are the ones who are going to, feast on the greener grass on the other side. And so while those who are at the front are pondering the steps they need to make to cross over, the guys at the back have no clue that the guys in front have literally stopped. And so because of the hard pulling together, those who paused at the front of the river find themselves in a dilemma, because when they're still thinking about whether to jump or not to jump, the momentum that's been created by the rest of the wild beasts and the rest of the herd at the back literally throws them in the river. But this is a very interesting thing, that once they find themselves in the river, even though they were not ready to jump, They do not turn back and say, I was not ready. let me go back. And neither do those who find themselves in the river start blaming those on the back to find out who pushed me. That's not there. Because the thing is, once you find yourself in the river, only one thing matters. No retreat, no surrender. Forward ever, backward never. And so the journey continues, because the push and the desire to want to get to where grass is greener is much greater than, the pull to want to hold you back to not get to jump into the river when you thought you were not ready. And so the journey crossing the river continues. But for those of us who have had this story before, know that the Mara River is one of those rivers that's heavily infested with crocodiles. Now, this is the season also that the crocodiles have been waiting for this crossover. While for you and I, Christmas is a very short duration of a few days, but for the crocodiles, it's a period spanning 2 to 3 months even. And so they lie in wait for the crossing of the wild beast. But the crocodiles are very strategic in their cause as well. They will not want to jump at catching the first wild beast that crosses over. In fact, they will lie in wait. Because you know what? While the few who probably are testing the waters are trying to find out whether the crocodiles are here or not, when they see that there's nothing, then that becomes an encouragement for the rest of the wild beast to cross. But then that's the right time for the crocodiles to pounce. And I can tell you, hundreds upon hundreds of wild beasts will be captured by the crocodiles in the river. And the thing is this, even though some will be caught by the crocodiles, the wild beasts do not turn back. Even though some will be trampled upon by others because they're trying to get over the jaws of the crocodile, they still do not turn back. The desire to want to move forward is much, much greater. And so it's recorded that many, many wild beasts and other browsers as well that follow the wild beast through this migration actually get to lose their lives. But the gist of this story is what awaits them on the other side. The other side is the Mara. And the Mara Reserve during this particular season is lush with green grass. And this is what the wild beasts have been waiting for. And so for those that manage to cross the river, the reward of the perils of their journey is the green grass on the other side. And they cannot just wait to land there and enjoy what this new environment has to offer. And this, ladies and gentlemen, marks the end of my story. So from this story of the wild beasts, allow me to share with you the 4 phases of leading through change, just so that you as a leader, as a manager, can be better placed to know how to navigate through change as it happens in your business and working together with your team to achieve the desired business results. Phase 1 from this wild beast story is what I would like to call discover. And discover here basically talks about the need to begin with clarifying a compelling why a certain change is happening in the business so that everybody can be onboarded or everybody can get on board and align with what the organization or the department or your team is seeking to achieve. You see, the why for the wild beast is very compelling and everybody can get to see it. Grass in the Serengeti is beginning to dry. There's no need for a Zoom meeting. There's no need for a notice to be put anywhere. The wild beasts inherently know that when the grass begins to dry, it's time to move. But you see, when dealing with teams and organizations, creating a compelling why is very critical because not everybody sees the same things from the same perspective. Probably it's only guys at the exco who have a clear vision of what's going on. But for the rest of the business, there needs to be an effective communication that needs to happen so that everybody needs to come on board. Therefore, it's incumbent upon you as a leader to begin by clarifying or creating a very compelling why as to why a certain change is happening and what people then need to do differently so that they can navigate through the process of change without a lot of resistance. Phase 2. Once you have created that compelling why, then the action needs to be put in place. So change begins with a game plan. If there is no game plan, then we all know navigating through change can become very difficult, can become very messy, can become very loud, particularly in organization. And so why is a game plan important? A game plan is important because you're able to lay down the steps of what's needed to manage through change effectively. A game plan is essential because when we have no game plan, then we do not know whether we are playing in the right direction or whether we are winning, and this becomes very important. You see, for the wild beast, the game plan is simple. We need to have stronger leaders to walk us through this journey so they can set the pace for us that as we get to migrate, we do not take too long on this other side and we find we can no longer get to move because grass is done, we are weaker, and as a herd, we cannot navigate through this change in an effective way. And so strong leaders set the pace. They set the pace for the team, they set the pace for the herd. And likewise, it is also for a leader within a work context. When you have a plan, it shows your team that you've thought 2-3 steps ahead, and then each and everybody can get to know how we are progressing in the step of change, and everybody can also tell whether we are really gaining or we are losing and what we may need to adjust. You see, if we move forward through a change process without a plan, then this is akin to what has been said before, that people without a plan are planning to fail. And so it's important, therefore, that as a leader, you need to come up with a change plan. So the decision to do that is upon you. So having accomplished phase 2, knowing that change begins with a plan and having put in a very concrete plan to be able to navigate through change, then phase 3 becomes important. And phase 3 is all about doing or executing your plan. And this is about getting to empower others and take steps to enact the kind of change that you want. You see, when we picked about the story of the wild beast, we got to realize that there are those that found themselves in the river because of the momentum from others. And they may not have jumped into the river because they really wanted to, even though they really didn't have much of a choice. Well, the thinking is this. As a leader, you don't want to handle your team that way. You would not want to shove them into a change process when they are not ready. And so there's the place for you as a leader to be able to empower your team, whether it's through communication, whether it's through training, or whether it's through exposure of what this training is meant to, or what this change is meant to achieve. And that becomes critical because as a leader, one of your primary mandates is to empower your team. And so there's the place for you to sit down with your team members. Again, not all of them are at the same level of adapting and taking on change. And so there's the place for you to be able to understand where everybody is at and doing the much you can, using all the resources that's available to you to be able to empower your team so that they can also be able to take the necessary steps needed to enact change. The success of, if you get to do that, then that means there'll be very little resistance towards a change process. And in fact, there's going to be greater buy-in through a people-driven process. And that is what you'd be looking forward to. Remember, in enacting change, executing or doing or putting your action, your plan to action is of great importance if you're to realize the gains and the benefit of what this change process is all about. Having done that, then we can quickly move to phase 4. And what is phase 4 all about? Phase 4 talks about discernment. Now that sounds like a very big word, but to break it down here, basically discernment means in the process of change, through the journey of change, you are able to gather insights of what's working and what's not working. Because you see, you need to sustain the momentum along the way. Change is hard, even for the wild beasts like we saw. Change is hard. And it's hard to the extent that there are those through this process actually get to lose their own lives in search for these greener pastures. There are those that are trampled upon by their fellow, wild beasts, and they get to drown in the river. There are those who along the way became sick, or became injured and were not probably even able to make it to the Mara River. Well, guess what? Discernment is also critical for a leader in a change process because through navigating this journey of change, there are those of us in our teams that will fall by the wayside. They're not able to take this process anymore because it's so disruptive, and they decide to quit the organization or even are fired because maybe they cannot align to the ideals and the objectives of the organization. So what does that mean for you? That as the journey continues, it's important for you as a leader to gather insights, see what's working, and continue building on that. What's not working, you may need to tweak a few things along the way, or stop doing it altogether, maybe because the casualties that it's causing to your team, it's of a bigger magnitude that will help you probably not even celebrate the meaning of what this change was meant to bring. And so change presents itself as a learning opportunity as well for a leader to understand the struggles of the team and even to know what needs to happen to improve so that the sustained momentum continues. And when we all get to finally arrive on the other side for what this change means, then we can all pat ourselves on the back. And that, ladies and gentlemen, are the 4 phases of change. So quickly, why don't we get to recap what these 4 steps of change or what these 4 phases of change are for our greater understanding. So these are the 4 phases of change from a recap perspective. Remember, phase 1 is all about discovery. Discover the reason as to why you're going through a change process. And this becomes important because for you to be able to navigate the process of change by winning your team over is you must have a very compelling why this change is important, why it's happening in the business, why it's critical for everybody to align. Phase 2, remember, it's all about deciding. And deciding is all about having a game plan. Now you're on board, so what next? It's having a game plan so that you can have a structured way to navigate through change. When change is unmanaged, when change is handled in a haphazard way, casualties are higher, the process is louder and messy, and you may never end up achieving what you want. Remember again, failure to plan is planning to fail. Phase 3 is all about doing. Now we have a strategy. Now we have a plan. Remember, organizations by and large don't succeed because they don't have a strategy. That's not the case. The issue is, how do we get to execute this strategy to realize the gains of whatever it's meant to be? And so in phase 3, when you're talking about doing, here for a leader, the impetus is empower others in your team, in the organization, in the business, also to be able to take the necessary steps to enact the kind of change that you're looking forward to. So it's important that you bring people on board by empowering them. Empowering them would mean exposing them to a lot more information, having communication cascade from up downwards, and even taking their feedback through a bottom-up approach. This would probably mean walking them through some training of change management, like the one we're walking you through, and that becomes very important. When people are empowered, they're able to take the initiative and the steps, they're able to take ownership, and they're even willing to be held accountable for what this change means at their station of work. And phase 4 is all about discerning. And discernment here is looking for insights. Change is a process. It's not an event. It's a journey. And the journey can be wrought with very many challenges. And what you want through a change process is not to lose your team. Is not to lose the ideals and the goals of the business. It's to be able to learn through the process of what worked or what didn't work, or while still in the process of what's working and what's not working. Why? Because great leaders who go through change know things that they need to start, stop, or even continue doing. And so discerning insights here through this process can help you sustain the momentum along the way. And when you're done, you will still have been able to maintain a greater part of your team without losing them along the way. Ultimately, you want, when you're celebrating this success, you're not doing it alone, but you're doing it together with the team that helped you achieve the kind of success that you're now celebrating. I hope that makes sense. Thank you.
This week's episode has come to an end, but the fun doesn't have to stop here. If you have any questions, suggestions, or feedback, head over right now to Twitter and Facebook and like and share, comment, get involved. Let us know what you think, what you want to learn next, and join us next time.